had to share something really scary that happened to me recently. It was last Friday night, and I was just finishing up dinner with my family. The night was calm and quiet, and I remember feeling relaxed after a long week at work. Little did I know things were about to take a turn for the worse. It was around 10 p.m. when I heard a loud crash from the back of the house. At first, I thought maybe something had fallen over in the garage, but then I heard voices, muffled and urgent. My heart started racing as I realized something was wrong. I quietly got up from the dinner table and peeked out the window. The window looked towards back of the house. Suddenly, I saw two moving figures in the dark. There were two men wearing dark hoodies trying to force open the back door. My mind went blank for a moment, and then fear kicked in. I knew we were going to be robbed. I rushed back to the dining room where my wife and kids were, trying to stay calm for their sake. Call the police, I whispered to my wife urgently. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, and she dialed 911. Meanwhile, I quickly ushered my kids into a nearby room, trying to keep them quiet and calm. My hands were shaking as I locked the door behind us. Outside, the voices were getting louder and louder. I could hear them now, shouting to each other in hushed tones. It felt like an eternity before we heard the sirens approaching. The police arrived quickly. They surrounded the house and entered cautiously, guns drawn. I felt a mix of relief and fear as I heard shouting and commotion from outside. My wife was still on the phone with the dispatcher, explaining what was happening. The kids were scared and clinging to me, asking if everything would be okay. I did my best to reassure them, but inside I was terrified too. After what seemed like forever, the police emerged from the house with two men in handcuffs. They had caught them red handed, trying to steal our valuables. I felt a rush of emotions, relief that they were caught, anger that they had invaded our home, and gratitude that we were all safe in the end. The police took statement from us and reassured us that everything would be okay now. They were incredibly professional and kind throughout the whole ordeal. I couldn't thank them enough for their quick response and bravery. As the adrenaline wore off, I realized how lucky we were. Things could have been much worse. We were shaken up and scared, but physically unharmed. The house was a mess. Drawers pulled out, cabinets open, but the damage was minimal compared to what it could have been. That night, we stayed with our friends. It took us a while to feel safe in our own home. We installed better security measures and talked to our kids about what had happened. It was a hard conversation, but an important one. Looking back, I am grateful for so many things. Grateful that we were all together when it happened. Grateful for the support of our friends and neighbors. And grateful that the police were able to catch the two guys. before anyone got hurt. It's been a week now, and we were starting to move on. We were more cautious now, always double checking the logs and keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. But we were also stronger as a family, knowing that we can get through tough times together. I hope none of you ever have to experience something like this. It's terrifying and unsettling in way I can't fully describe. But if you ever do find yourself in a similar situation, remember to stay calm, call for help, and hold your loved ones closer. And be grateful for every moment of safety and security you have. This experience happened to me and my partner. It was supposed to be a fresh start for both of us, a new home in a new neighborhood. But what began as a excitement quickly turned into a harrowing experience that forced us to reconsider our choices. My partner and I had just moved into our new home on a sunny Saturday morning. The neighborhood seemed quiet enough during the day, with families out walking their dogs and children playing in nearby yards. We were optimistic about our decision, eager to settle into our first home together. As evening approached, we started unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, lost in the excitement of making our new home feel like our own. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a long shadows across our street. That's when we began to notice subtle signs that was not as idyllic as it seemed. We shrugged it off and went back to our unpacking. After a while of unpacking things and moving furniture, we were quite tired. We both took a bath and sit down for our dinner. Around 9 p.m., we heard raised voices coming from the street outside. Curious, we peeked through the curtains to see a group of young adults gathered on the sidewalk, arguing loudly. They seemed too agitated, gesturing angry at each other before disappearing into the darkness. We exchanged uneasy glances but reassured each other that every neighborhood had its downsides. It was probably just a misunderstanding. We reasoned with that. We continued our dinner. After that, we returned to unpacking our things, hoping that commotion was an isolated incident. But our hopes were shattered later that night. Around midnight, we were jolted awake by the sound of breaking glasses. My partner and I shot upright in the bed, hearts pounding with fear. We listened intently, straining to hear any further noises from outside. Seconds stretched into minutes of tense silence before the sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel reached our ears. Panic surged through us. We realized someone was outside our house, moving stealthily. We lay frozen in our bed, daring to breathe. Suddenly, our bedroom door cracked open slowly. My partner stifled a gasp as a shadow figure stepped into the room. Adrenaline surged through me as I reached for the bedside lamp, ready to defend ourselves. But before I could react, a voice spoke out in a low, menacing tone. Stay quiet, and no one gets hurt. The intruder hissed, their voice rough and unfamiliar. My partner clutched my arm tightly, tears veiling her eyes. We exchanged a look of terror, silently communicating our shared dread. The intruder moved closer, their presence looming over us like a dark cloud. They demanded money and other valuables, their words laced with menace. My mind raced with fear and confusion. How had our dream of a new home turned into a nightmare so quickly? With trembling hands, I managed to reach for my phone, hoping to call for some help. But the intruder saw my movement and lunged forward, snatching the phone from my grasp. They warned us against any further attempt to resist, their threats chilling us to the bone. For what felt like an eternity, we complied with their demands, handing over whatever valuables we had. The intruder moved swiftly and methodically, ransacking our belongings in search of more and more. Each passing moment felt like an eternity. Our sense of security shattered beyond any repairing. Finally, the intruder fled into the night, leaving us shaken and vulnerable. We huddled together in the darkness, the weight of what had just happened singing. My partner trembled in my arms, her breathing coming in shallow gasps. We called the police immediately, our voices trembling as we recounted the terrifying incident. Officers arrived swiftly, their presence a reassuring beacon in our hour of need. They listened attentively, taking statements and assessing the scene for any evidence. In the days that followed, we struggled to come to terms with what had just happened. Our once promising new home now felt tainted by fear and uncertainty. We couldn't shake the feeling of being violated. Our sense of safety shattered. Neighbors offered sympathetic nods and murmured assurance, sharing their own concern about the neighborhood's decline. It became clear that our experience was not an isolated one, but part of a larger pattern of crime and unrest in the area. With heavy hearts, my partner and I made the difficult decision to move out. We couldn't bear the thought of living in constant fear, always looking over our shoulders. Our dream of a fresh start had been shattered, replaced by a deep seated unease. As we packed our belongings and said goodbye to the house in that troubled neighborhood, we vowed never to forget the lesson we learned. Safety and security are not to be taken for granted. Sometimes the best choice is to listen to our instincts and prioritize our well being above all other things. I have been debating whether to post this for a while now, but I feel like it's time to share my story. I am hoping someone out there can relate or offer some insight. This is a long one, so grab a drink and settle in. It's a story about something that happened to me and my family in my grandparents' old house. To give you some context, my grandparents' house is in a small town in the Midwest. It's an old two-story farmhouse that has been family house for generations. The house has always had this slightly eerie feeling to it, but I never thought much of it until the summer I turned 15. That summer changed everything for me. My parents were going through a rough patch, and they decided it would be best for me to spend some time with my grandparents. I was a typical teenager, so I wasn't thrilled about being away from my friends, but I agreed anyway. Little did I know that summer would be one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I arrived at my grandparents' house on a sweltering July afternoon. The heat seemed to hang in the air, making the old farmhouse feel even more hot. My grandparents greeted me warmly, and after a brief chat, they showed me to the guest room on the second floor. The room was cozy, but had this lingering, musty smell that I couldn't quite place. My grandmother explained that it used to be my mother's room when she was a child. I thought it was a bit odd, but I shrugged it off. I unpacked my bag and tried to get comfortable, but the heat made me restless. That night, as I tried to get some sleep, I heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the hallway. I figured it was just the house settling, so I tried to ignore it and focus on the noises of the crickets outside my bedroom window. But the footsteps keep coming and going, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was walking back and forth just outside my room. Eventually, I got up and peeked into the hallway, but there was no one there. I thought maybe it was my imagination or that my grandparents were moving around in the downstairs or something. Then I went back to the bed, but I didn't sleep well. Every creak of the floorboard made me jump, and I kept staring at the shadows on the walls. Over the next few days, things started to get even weirder. The first incident happened in the kitchen. I was alone, making myself a sandwich. I heard a distinct, loud bang coming from the pantry. I thought maybe a can had fallen off the shelf or something like. So I went over to check. But when I opened the pantry door, there was nothing out of place. I shrugged it off, but the unease was growing inside me. Another time, I was sitting in the living room reading a book when I saw a shadow move across the room. I looked up, but there was no one there. I convinced myself it was just a trick of the light, but it left me feeling on the edge again. And one evening, I was watching the TV when I heard a soft, eerie whisper in my ear. It was so quiet that I thought I might have imagined it, but the hair on my back stood up. I looked around the room, but I saw nothing unusual. Things escalated when I discovered an old mirror in the attic. I had been exploring the house out of boredom, and I found the attic door hidden behind some old blankets. I climbed up the stairs and found the attic to be full of old furniture, dusty boxes, and lots of cobwebs. Among the items was this old, ornate mirror. It was covered with a white sheet, and when I pulled it off, I was struck by how old it looked. The frame was intricately carved with designs that seemed almost too detailed for a simple mirror. After spending some time in the attic, I came back to my room. That night, I was lying in the bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a noise coming from the attic. It sounded like something heavy walking on the floor. I was too scared to get up and check what it was, so I just pulled the cover over my head and tried to ignore it. The noise stopped after a while, but I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. And the next day came. I mentioned the mirror to my grandparents. They seemed surprised and a bit uneasy when I described it. My grandfather said it was an old family heirloom and that it had been put away because it was broken. They didn't seem to want to talk about it much after that. Things really took a turn for the worse when I started having disturbing dreams. In my dreams, I was walking through the house, but it was different. Everything was darker and colder. I could see shadows moving in the corner of my vision, and I felt like I was being watched all the time. One particular night, I dreamed that I was standing in front of the mirror in the attic. I could see a figure standing behind me, but whenever I turned, no one was there. The figure was a dark silhouette, and though I couldn't see any details, I could feel its eyes on me. I woke up screaming and drenched in sweat, and I stood up for the entire night and didn't go back to sleep. By the end of the week, I was beyond freaked out. I was having trouble sleeping, and the constant feeling of being watched was wearing me down. The final straw came one night when I was lying in my bed, trying to fall asleep again, and I heard a loud bang coming from the attic. This time, I couldn't ignore it, so I grabbed a flashlight and slowly made my way up to the attic. My heart was pounding as I reached the top of the stairs. I looked around, but nothing seemed out of place. The mirror was still there, covered by the white sheet. I was about to turn back when I noticed something odd. The sheet was moving slightly, as if something was underneath it. I reached out to pull it away, but before I could, I heard a low growl coming from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. My flashlight flickered, and I could see the shadows in the corner of the attic stretching and shifting. I ran down the stairs and out of the attic as fast as I could. That night, I packed up my things and told my grandparents I wanted to go home. I couldn't stay another minute in the old house. My grandmother looked at me with a mix of sadness and relief, and she didn't ask any questions about why I'm leaving early. My grandfather drove me back to my parents' house in the next morning. Since then, I haven't been back to that house. I heard from my parents that my grandparents eventually decided to move out from the old farmhouse. They say they couldn't stand living there anymore, but they never went into the details about why. I don't know if it was the house itself or something else, but my experience there was more than just creepy and scary. It was downright terrifying. I'm still not sure what I encountered, but it felt very real to me. I'm sharing this story because I know it sounds crazy, but it's really happened to me. I'm hoping someone out there might have a similar experience or might have some explanation for what I went through. I have debated for almost a year whether to share this. Part of me still doesn't believe it happened to me, and another part of me knows the second I put into words, it becomes real in a way I can't ignore it anymore. But the nightmares haven't stopped, and every time the full moon rolls around, I find myself lying awake, sweating and listening, waiting for something will never come scratching at my windows again. So I am going to write it all as best as I can. Just know that what I saw in Black Hollow wasn't a story and it wasn't some trick of my imagination. It was real. God help me. It was real. I am a wildlife photographer. I have spent the better part of 15 years chasing animals across the country and sometimes outside it, hoping to capture the moments that most people will never see with their own eyes. I have been charged by a moose. I have been stood 15 feet from a wild grizzly bear. I have watched wolf pack take down a deer in the snow. I am not new to the danger. I am not too prone to exaggerate the things I have witnessed. If anything, I am too skeptical for my own good. But this experience, it was different. It all started when a friend of mine, another photographer who liked to chase folklore and legends, mentioned this tiny town in Appalachian foothills called Black Hollow. He told me that for decades, locals there whispered about something prowling in the woods under the full moon. Cows gutted in pastures, sheep torn apart, even guard dogs going missing. Some people called it coyotes, others said feral dogs. The more superstitious spoke of curses and monsters. My friend laughed it off, but the way he told the story made me curious about it. I started looking online, but there wasn't much. The scattered mentions on old message boards, a couple of blurry photos of dead animals, a lot of locals warning outsiders to mind their own business when we were there. That only made me want to go there. It was in early October when I packed my car. It was in early October when I packed my stuff and readied my car and made the trip. The farther I drove into the mountains, the narrower the road got, until the trees were so close on both sides that it felt like driving through a tunnel. By the time I was within a few miles of the town, my GPS lost its signal completely. No cell service either, just me and the road and miles of dense forest that swallowed the sunlight. I didn't pass another car for almost an hour while traveling through there. When the town finally appeared, it was almost jarring. A handful of houses sagging with age, a boarded up gas station, a diner with flickering neon sign, the kind of place time forgot. And right at the edge where the forest threatened to reclaim it, a old hotel. Two stories, wooden siding, weathered grey. A sign that looked like it had been painted since the 60s. Inside, the air smelled like dust. The lobby had a desk, a couch sagging in the middle, and wallpaper peeling at the corners. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s, gowned, with sharp features and tired eyes. His name, I later learned, was Miss Craig. I told him I'd be staying for a couple of nights, working on a photography project in the woods. He handed me a key without much ceremony, but before I could walk away, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't go into the woods during a full moon, not if you value your skin." The way he said it, quiet, flat, no hint of humor, that unnerved me. I tried to play it off, asked if it was because the hunters or something dangerous in the area. He just shook his head. "Something's out there, ain't meant to be seen." Then he looked past me as if the conversation was over. That night, I walked into the town, hoping to find someone willing to talk about it. The diner was the only place open. A few locals sat outside smoking, and when they saw me, the conversation dipped. I asked casually about the wildlife, if there were any wolves in the area. The oldest of the group, a man with wiry beard and hand like knocked wood, muttered, "No wolves here, not for a long time." After that, I came back to my room and I went to bed. That night with my curiosity burning hotter than ever before. The next evening, I headed into the forest with my gear. The moon was full and hung low, turning the leaves silver. I walked for an hour, setting up motion sensor camera along the game trail and near a creek. The deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. No crickets, no frogs, no owls either, just completely silent, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears. Then I smelled it. At first, I thought it was just something dead nearby, a raccoon, or maybe a deer. But the longer I stood there, the worse it got. A stench like wet fur mixed with rotten meat, something sharp, metallic, like blood. It made my stomach twitch. That's when I heard the growl. It came from the trees ahead, low and guttural, but there was something off about it. It wasn't purely animal. There was a depth, almost a resonance, that it made sound disturbingly close to a human. The hair on my back of my neck stood up. I swung my flashlight, but the beam caught nothing. My hand shook as I raised my camera and snapped a photo. The flash lit up the forest for a split second, and in that instant, I saw two eyes. Amber, glowing fixed on me from between the tree lines, and below them, the outline of something massive, broad shoulders covered in shaggy fur, limbs that too long, and a snout just forward with blinding teeth, upright and watching my every move. The flash died, plugging me back into the darkness. My head slammed against my ribs. My brain screamed at me to run. But I was froze, staring into the black gap where the eyes had been. The smell grew stronger, and I heard branches creak under the weight, and it was moving closer. That broke me. I turned and ran, My flashlight beam swung wildly, catching glimpses of trunks and roots before I nearly tripped over them. Behind me, I heard it crashing through the trees, heavy and fast. But it wasn't on four legs. I could tell them from the rhythm of the footsteps. It was upright and running like a man. When the hotel finally came into the view, I threw myself inside and slammed the door shut. Miss Crane was behind the desk. He didn't ask me what happened. He just looked at me and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I couldn't answer. My whole body was shaking. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of the wind against the window had me on the edge. The next morning, I thought about leaving, but when I checked the camera I strapped to my chest, I found a blurry frame of it, amber eyes, glowing in the dark, for catching the light of my flash. It wasn't proof anyone would believe, but it was enough for me, enough to know I hadn't imagined it all. And like a fool, I told myself I had to go back one more night. That evening, I stayed closer to the inn, maybe a 10 minutes run away. I had my GoPro on, a stronger flashlight this time, even a hunting knife strapped to my belt, though I doubted it would do much good. Around midnight, the forest went still again, then the smell, and then the growl. I was standing in the middle of the forest. There is darkness around me. I have heard wolf before, but this wasn't a wolf. The sound stretched too long, broke half like vocal cords tearing, rising in pitch until it almost became a scream. It vibrated through my bones. When the howl cut off, I realized it was close, too close. Then I spun my light, and there was it, standing at the tree line, upright, chest rising and falling. Eyes locked on me. It took a step forward, claws scraping down the bark of the tree, with a sound that made my teeth ache. After seeing that, I turned and I ran. I don't remember much except the pure panic. My feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Behind me it roared, a sound that wasn't animal and wasn't human either, but something in between. The forest exploded with noise as it chased me, branches snapping, earth shaking under its weight. I reached the hotel and slammed the door behind me. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. For a moment, I thought I was safe. Then the scratching started on my window. Slow at first, then faster. The glass trembled and cracks spread across it. My stomach dropped. My room was on the second floor. I turned off the light and went into the closet. After some time, the scratching still continued, and I didn't wait any longer. I grabbed my bag, my keys, everything I could carry, and I ran. As I tore down from the hotel, I heard the sound of shattering glass above me. I didn't stop to check on Mr. Crane. I didn't look back. I jumped into my car, slammed the door, and drove like hell, tires spinning in the gravel as I fled that cursed town. I drove until the sky lightened with dawn, then pulled into a rest stop and sat there shaking, barely able to breathe. When I finally checked my GoPro footage, most of it was useless. Taking lights, panicked gasps, blurred shapes, but in one frame, frozen in the chaos, you can see it. A face in the trees, a snow, teeth burnt, eyes burning like coals, and that image burned in my mind forever. Hope you guys like this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. Enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.